What happened in the sprint for the
Miami Grand Prix?
Hello everybody and welcome back to the P1 podcast with depressed Matt and depressed Tommy. Our favourite drivers, all of them, as of recording right now, did not score points in the sprint. That includes Charles Leclerc,
days.
Max Verstappen, Kimi Antonelli and Fernando Alonso. I don't know where to start this, Tommy. I just feel... I've had a little while to process mine because my depression happened even before the beginning of the sprint. You, Tommy? I'm kind of living a little bit in the fact that you're feeling quite upset.
I'd never actually... I'm not one of these people that actually believes in karma, but for basically spending the entire start of the watch-along laughing at your pain and constantly making jokes, and I think even on the watch-along you said... in frustration, I can't wait until Max Verstappen and Kimi Antonelli take each other out. And then not only did that happen, but then literally a lap later, Fernando Alonso is backwards in the wall, my only remaining driver. Oh, I just can't believe it. You couldn't write it. But what an insane just sprint.
An insane sprint that lasted about 10 laps of actual action because the rest of it, we'll get into that. But before we dive into all of the carnage and the chaos, there was a question from everyone saying, am I okay? No.
Do you want to reflect on it again?
Well, they reflected on it enough in the coverage where they constantly just showed a crash of Charles Leclerc. Look, it was... some people were asking, does this hurt more or the Brazilian GP formation lap from 2023? Definitely Brazil, because Charles was on the front row for the main race. This was... P6, Ferrari were reasonably washed. However, now with the benefit of hindsight,
now looking at
and
what
seeing
Hamilton
that Hamilton got P3, Charles could have won it all. So, no, I'm less okay now after watching a great sprint, which is weird to say. But yeah, my initial reaction to that was, why on earth are we taking any risks on the intermediate tyre when it was quite literally bucketing it down at that point? It felt like an unnecessary risk from Ferrari and Charles, in my opinion. Oh yeah,
it was insane weather and conditions at that point, wasn't it? Because Hamilton was on the radio going, "Why on earth are we on inters?" We were actually about to go live on stream, and we're kind of out the room, so kind of missed who was on the wets. But it sounds like other people were on the wets going to the grid potentially. Can't confirm that. Obviously, we're recording straight after the sprint. But the fact that Leclerc just basically was steaming around in those conditions on the inters, huge crash. It wasn't just like an aquaplane at a slow corner and he's gone off. He flew into the wall, completely destroyed the car, and a huge error. And of course, the conditions were absolutely atrocious at that point as well.
They certainly were. So yeah, we can put that very much just away in a little locker that I'll never open again because I don't want to talk about it anymore. But what I do want to talk about is Max Verstappen versus Kimi Antonelli. Now, of course, this was something I was not expecting because, of course, I'm lashing out left, right and centre to you, Tommy, because you are taking the mick at every single opportunity. I could say any word and you'd somehow link that back to Charles Leclerc and the wall. So the P1 Patreon member Lumixion has asked, how are you feeling, Tommy? So I'm going to let you take the wheel on this one.
Like I said at the top of the show, feeling like karma maybe does exist because I went absolutely ham on it, and I think I was more disappointed that obviously Antonelli had the bad start and then made a mistake, and he kind of never was there to capitalise. But again, the feeling of Max Verstappen and he's kind of in the hunt. At least it's the sprint, I guess. And I kind of joked
That's
about
what
this
I was
on
saying
the
about Charles.
Yeah,
at least
it's funny. Yeah. I do wonder. I joked about this on the watch along because there was even a team radio from Kimi Antonelli where they were going, "Don't worry, Kimi, it's not the main race." And you kind of think Formula One are really pushing these sprints and trying to make them this really exciting thing. And it's not the time to have it. But I've got strong opinions about the sprint time anyway, and having it before a qualifying session, it just seems nonsense to me to have it as the kind of the fact that we've just had this unbelievable sprint and we'll get onto this, but they had to basically end it early when we could have maybe had a grandstand finish, because they need to do a qualifying session later in the day is just completely stupid in my opinion. The sprint was really, really exciting, and it is irrelevant in 2 hours. I don't like that at all. But maybe for this pain, how would I do it? I'd do exactly the same as we had before. We had qualifying on Friday, have a sprint day, and then the sprint is the main show. And then if we'd have had that today, the sprint, they could have red flagged it at the end and waited and not had to worry about, we're pushing in times.
We don't know that the reason that they didn't red flag was because of the qualifying session time. We don't know that because there's less than 3 hours between the end of the sprint and when qualifying is going to begin. It might just be the fact that they didn't deem the crash big enough, or the fact that the barrier wasn't affected, and therefore it's just dealt under safety car. We've seen it many times in the past with Formula One. I was sat there going, you've got to red flag that, you've got to red flag that, surely you've got to red flag that.
They're red flagging that in the main race, 100%.
Yeah. Well, who knows, mate? Who knows with the stewards and the FIA and the race director these days? It's all very unclear. Actually, let's reflect quickly on the start. I said prior to the race beginning that we would, because I was asking you how confident are you about Kimi Antonelli winning the race, and I said let's talk after turn one, because I was absolutely convinced that Piastri was going to get Antonelli. And in that first phase they were very similar, but it was that second phase as Piastri just got a little bit better traction and a bit better purchase, that he got up the inside. And you mentioned the mistake from Antonelli, and it 100% is inexperience. When you watch it from a spectator's point of view, the way that he tried to hang it round the outside of Oscar. I mean, you could only have to go back to literally Saudi to see that Oscar Piastri is absolutely never going to give you room to go around the outside if he's got the inside line. It's just racing, right? So, and it kind of made me think of Norris last year in the China sprint, where he tried to hang it round the outside of Hamilton, I believe it was, and then just went off the track. Was it Hamilton? I think it was Hamilton, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was Hamilton. Side by side.
And he went off the track and then lost loads of positions. That felt very similar for me with Antonelli there. He will live and he will learn from this, but it was a shame, because I would have loved to have seen if Antonelli could have held on, because it was very difficult to overtake in those conditions.
It was indeed. Yeah, I think, I've said this before, the reason I like Kimi Antonelli is he always goes for it, and I think we saw a driver that the sensible option there, when you're kind of thinking with your head, would be to just go, well, this isn't happening, settle for second, slot into second. But, I like that drivers absolutely go for it, basically. So the fact that Antonelli at least tried it, yes, it didn't pay off, but I'll always prefer drivers doing that, basically, because that's kind of what I want to see in Formula One.
Absolutely. But yeah, shame to not see Kimi Antonelli lead, but his time will come, and it was still a phenomenal sprint quali. But then, of course, he crashed with Max Verstappen as well. P1 Patreon member Waffles Reeser. Is a 10-second penalty really enough for a release so unsafe that it prevents the other car from making its pit stop? Okay, hold on. We're gonna ring the klaxon. Or no, press the klaxon. We're not going to ring the klaxon. We ring the bell and we press the klaxon about the fact that penalties are not given out due to the consequence. Okay, the stewards will not look at the fact that that Kimi couldn't pit. They just look at the fact that it was an unsafe release. Otherwise, you're opening a can of worms with it all. So 10 seconds is the penalty. It's really unfortunate for Antonelli, but what more do you want to give Max Verstappen? He finished last in the sprint due to it. So
he might as well have been disqualified anyway. And it's funny because he should absolutely get a penalty, and we've had this grey area before, but there was an interesting, there was a question from our patron Brienne who said, is a 10-second penalty too harsh when the incident wasn't the driver's fault? And that's the other side of the coin, isn't it, when we have these incidents where essentially that's a team error, that the light went off in these pit stops. Bring back the lollipop and they could actually see what's happening. But no, they obviously want to save as much time as possible. They have these fancy light systems, and it obviously got pressed. Max went out, and it's not his fault because he's just following what the team do, but you have to give a driver a penalty because...
Yeah, otherwise they would just do it anyway.
They would just do it. So, that you can't take constructors' points, if that would open a whole can of worms. It has to be a penalty, and, you can't... You can look at this and go, it prevents the other car from making a stop, and it screwed over Antonelli. as much as I'm absolutely gutted for him, that is just the nature of Formula One. Sometimes you get absolutely shafted. And where do you draw the line of, if someone's made a mistake and crashed into you, do you allow them to have a minus 30 delta where you put them back in the race? No, there's just...
it would just be too confusing.
Sometimes you're just unlucky and Formula One incidents happen and you have to deal with it.
It has to be a blanket penalty for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, so... Because I think as well, like, with Waffles Reese, what they've said there, is it really enough, the 10-second penalty? But giving like a 10-second stop and go, which is essentially a 30-second penalty, would then have to be applied across all pit lane errors, and some things are very minute and some things are large. So just having a blanket penalty, as much as it maybe not feels like enough in this circumstance, it just has to be to remain fair. Next question, and moving away from the pit lane, P1 Patreon member Lee M. Should Lawson have backed out of the move on Alonso? Looked like he was chancing a lunge. Yes.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. I cannot wait to hear what Fernando Alonso has to say after this one, because I'm sure the very, very warm relationship that Alonso and Lawson have had since day one.
Yes, they've got history, haven't they?
Will continue on, but that was reckless from Lawson. Lawson was having a really good race up until that point. He was going to finish in the points. Now, as of recording, I haven't seen
the points,
yeah, he hasn't been given a penalty, but for me, that is a slam dunk Lawson error and taking out Alonso. So it's a shame for Fernando. That was going to be his first points of the season. And another piece of bad luck. This one definitely not driver error. Yeah, that was 100% on Lawson. If he doesn't get a penalty, that is utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, I can't believe it's another situation as well. Whereas the Fernando Alonso fan, I have to endure the fact that not only did Fernando Alonso was again doing an amazing job, but everyone will look at the result and go, "Oh, Stroll's bagged a load of some points again for Aston Martin."
I tell you,
I know. He is when Alonso keeps being the unluckiest driver in the world, but that is just generally his career anyway, isn't it? Really.
I know we joke, but Stroll's actually had a decent race, so fair play.
He had. He made it through the carnage, didn't he? And yeah, he's picked up points again, but it's just so unfortunate for Alonso to that he was on for he was having a mega drive in that tractor sticking on the back of Hamilton and Albon, and kind of being up there to get points on merit, even if the race had just continued as like a kind of Inter's slightly damp race, but instead, alas, chaos.
Yeah, and not only do I obviously feel aggrieved for Alonso, and I believe Lawson should have got a penalty, but Lawson also, with that very silly move, ruined the sprint for us. The last 4 laps, that was due to
God,
move.
it was an absolute cliffhanger, wasn't it?
It was.
If Lando had stayed out, and you'd have seen... It was because you had the timing up and you said 5 seconds a lap Hamilton was gaining, and it was 20 seconds with 4 laps to go.
Lando was going to pit anyway, wasn't he? Because McLaren had decided to pit before the safety car came out. I don't know whether they've reacted to it because Alonso was in the wall.
Maybe.
But for me,
I wonder.
But for me, I think that McLaren, we know what McLaren are like. They're quite safe when it comes to their strategy. So they would go, we'll take a 1-2 with Piastri winning over Norris having a tyre failure on the last lap because he's taken his inters too long.
Is it peak just Formula One fan behaviour in general that we go into it slating Miami, saying it's the worst race ever, that we've had an absolute banger, and we're like, but it could have been so good.
I want more!
Yeah, exactly. Realistically, what more are you going to get from a sprint? Like that is the most action and chaos that we've seen in a sprint in a very long time, if not maybe even ever, with the amount of incidents that we've had. So,
and I'm hoping that all the drivers are able to take part in qualifying in only a few hours' time with the
and something
the
you said on the
damage
watch
that some
along.
of the drivers have.
If you ever need it again, we've said this so many times, but the theory that it's absolutely rubbish that if you put the sprint before a qualifying session, the drivers will be like, I need to remember about qualifying later, as they're diving up the inside of each other and smashing into each other.
They turn into demons.
Even for
the minute
13th, they were doing that.
Yeah.
They're Formula One drivers. It
love
will
it.
happen.
Yeah. They put Tsunoda out there. Red Bull did on soft tire or medium tires on a reasonably sort of damp track, and it was sprints.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, we love it. We love it indeed. Next question. People on Patreon member Mal Dibbs. What is the point in having wet tires if they are not going to be used when they should be? Now, of course, there was a lot of frustration, wasn't there, including myself and Tommy, about just sitting there going, this is the pinnacle of motorsport. And we come to a grinding halt the second a little bit of rain comes onto the racetrack. No, we can't possibly. The visibility. Now, this one, people are saying, why don't we use the wet tyres? And I was sat there as well saying that. But I believe the problem this time around, and usually it is that the visibility rather than the drivers being able to negotiate the conditions. I think when there's standing water and aquaplaning like we saw with Leclerc, it wasn't raceable anyway. But the reason, I guess, towards the end and when we were waiting was more around visibility. That being said, that I still feel as though they were waiting too long in order to make sure it's really, really safe. And I get it. And I appreciate Formula One having made so many incredible steps to making these drivers as safe as possible in these machines. But there has to be a limit where you go, okay, we're just going to have to let them race and see how they get on. And then if there is a crash or whatever, or they genuinely are like, oh, I can't see, then call something. But instead it just feels like it's the other way, where it's safe. Let's go another lap behind the safety car, another lap behind the... Okay, right, everybody can see now. Let's go.
And the argument in the rain that I've always thought as well is they're going so much slower that I actually think Formula One is most dangerous when it's pure dry conditions. Like look at Doohan's crash when he failed to close his DRS and he flew into that wall. That's a scary crash. And you look at, the crashes in the rain, you hit the back of someone, but you're kind of tootling around at much slower speeds. That I think Formula One is a lot more dangerous in the dry conditions anyway. So the safety
I guess
thing...
it's if a driver's had a spin and then you can't see them
and stuff.
And then you hit them at a stationary. That's obviously the concern, isn't it?
But the most frustrating thing, and I even called this completely on the watch along, that I said they'll start the race and within 5 laps they will be cooling their tyres down. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened.
My sister is apparently entering the backdrop and going.
Do you want to do a family top 3 for the qualifying?
So there you go. Nope, she didn't hear that and she's gone. Let's go to the next question, which is P1 Patreon member Isabel. Why does F1 not add safety car laps as extra laps at the end of the race? That sprint was great, but the safety car made the ending so anticlimactic and destroyed the competition. Fuel. I guess that's probably one thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not like Formula E, which I think is brilliant, where they can just add laps because they're able to conserve energy and this, that and the other.
Formula One is so about fuel they can't plan for the final race because you basically screw so many teams, and then I guess the flip side of the argument would be, well, you just have to deal with it and run that risk and put a bit more fuel in case, but the teams wouldn't.
Or you have like a minimum fuel that if you have to account for 3 extra laps. I do
get the frustration because we were robbed of a really, really exciting finish. It is just a sprint, but yeah, I think the most frustrating thing about it is it was going to be such a good finish between Norris and Piastri. We've said so many times, haven't we, that we've been waiting to have that battle between the two of them, and finally it looked like it was happening. Not only that, you had the drivers that had pitted before that were flying through the pack. Like Hamilton was so quick because he'd been on the tyres for a lot longer, and it's such a shame, but at the end of the day,
I will take that.
At the end of the day,
we had.
Yeah, exactly. You have to take the fact that Miami has delivered, even if it's more just through the weather. We all have our thoughts on the circuit, but through the weather, it delivered an absolutely banging sprint. I just wish that we could kind of dwell on it a bit more rather than going straight into qualifying, which I'm obviously looking forward to, no doubt. But I don't know. I don't like just kind of being like, off you go, forget about it now.
Now, I think it's also worth mentioning that as of recording, there are so many drivers under investigation, but Alex Albon needs a shout out because as of right now, he finished 4th. He finished 4th on the road. Albon in a Williams is ridiculous. Stroll obviously 6th in the Aston Martin, but he might even be promoted to 5th if Albon gets a penalty because Albon's under investigation. Lawson will be under investigation. I think Behrman, who's finished 8th from 19th on the grid, is also under investigation for a pit exit incident with Hulkenberg, and it was apparently his fault. I haven't seen it, but I saw the chat where Sky Germany, I think, had shown some of them, and it was pretty much a slam dunk. So that will promote Tsunoda potentially up to 6th if all of those drivers get penalties.
That is insane.
Which will then put Antonelli in 7th, Gasly in 8th. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, we'll have to reflect on that a little bit more maybe in our qualifying podcast later on today. But
Yeah.
I mean, how do you sum that up, Tommy? Give us your final thoughts.
How do I sum it up is that Max Verstappen, normally on any other podcast, there'd be so little kind of to talk about, particularly during a sprint, that we've not even mentioned about Max Verstappen's kind of unsafe, his start procedure, where wasn't he over the line? And that is a perfect summary of just how chaotic that race is, that if this was, a boring Grand Prix, we'd have probably talked about this for 20 minutes, but it's just like remember that happened as well.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah,
what a crazy sprint.
And to sort of explain that, I guess, just very quickly, the belief would be, because all we saw was the onboard, but as long as there's any piece of tyre in contact with the grid box, then he's all good.
I'm pretty sure that happened in Australia, I want to say 2023 or 2024.
Yes.
There was a similar moment with Max, yeah.
Yeah, I think we even made a video about it.
We did, yeah.
So yeah, as long as some of the tyre is touching the grid box, then he is all good, even though it did look visibly from the
Whereas
onboard.
the reason for Lando in Bahrain was because he was over it.
Yeah, he was out.
He was clearly over it, yeah.
Exactly. So there you go. Right. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in to this sprint recap. Thank you, Tommy, for your final thoughts and for just being delightful as always. We will be back later on today for the Quali podcast, and we'll be live, as always, on all the beautiful platforms for our watch-along. So we'll see you very soon. Lots of love. Take care. Bye!
Goodbye.